Hey everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's on the Tube. It's our show where we normally review things in the world of television, which usually could be an episode-by-episode review of every episode of a currently on-air show, or doing the special season review, definitive edition, where we go all in. Spoilers, all in, just letting you know from the get-go. Today we are talking about the one and only Nancy Drew, Season 1. This is a very celebratory time, what's the word? I forget the word. But it's special. It's a special time right now. Next week, when this is being first posted, Nancy Drew will return for its fourth and final season. It's very bittersweet for me because when I started this entire show, What's in the Tube in general, Nancy Drew episode 1, the series premiere, was the second episode of the show. And the fact that it's coming to an end. And 4 years doesn't sound like that much time. It really doesn't. But for me, a lot has happened to me in 4 years. A lot has happened. A lot has happened to the show, and a lot has happened in my life. And now that we're winding down to a close, starting next week properly, it's bittersweet. It is bittersweet. We get to see, well, for the people who've already caught up and everything, we have 13 weeks of, the Drew crew one last time together before we say farewell to them. So for me, to get back in my mood of the entire work, because it's been a while. It's been over 400 days since season 3 ended. It's been a long time. And so I knew it's time. We need to go back to season 1, go back to where it all began, and this time talk about everything in a full season capacity. Because I actually did a season 1 review back in 2020. I did this before, but it was a non-spoiler for people who have yet to see the first season. Now, you've had 3 years to watch. You had a full 3 years, and if you're binging the show right now, it's perfect timing. But as well as just for me, your moment is past. But of course, obviously, if you haven't watched the first season of Nancy Drew, you could just turn away and just not watch the review. There's a non-spoiler edition if you want to go check it out. If you also want to watch season 1 entirely, you can go check out all of our episode reviews. They're a little bit dated. It's a little old, but they're still the same me. I think the core of me is still the same. So getting down into it properly, Nancy Drew Season 1, you can stream it only on Max right now. I'm still getting used to that. It was HBO Max for years, and then they just rebranded to Max, so a little bit weird for me to say. But yeah, to start from the get-go, just now, wholeheartedly, was Nancy Drew Season 1 worth the binge? Is it worth watching it in general? So those two questions. For both of them, it's yes. Absolutely, yes. I binged this show. I actually was a little late. I was supposed to watch this show and do this review weeks ago, but in terms of recording wise, but I got busy. So I kind of got scared, I haven't watched season 1 in forever. I haven't watched Nancy Drew in over a year. Is the magic still there? And I could say yes, the magic is still there. I'm a very special breed when it comes to the shows I watch. I can't always guarantee what's going to be the show that I'm going to love and what show I'm going to hate. The shows that are critically acclaimed, like Game of Thrones, you assume it's amazing and I will get into it. And sometimes it's a slog. And then you have these type of show where they're not going to top the Emmy list or anything. They're not going to trend the world on fire. But I end up loving it. And it goes down to one simple thing: the characters. In every show I watch, the story can be complete trash, which it has been at times. I've watched a lot of TV shows, a lot of seasons. The show is not that great, but the characters are entertaining enough, and I love them enough that I want to see where they go. I want to see how they all end up, and that's what guided me through. And that was the case with Nancy Drew, where for me, I love mystery. I love watching these shows that have a mystery to solve. It's kind of like a whodunit, trying to figure out what's at stake here, who's the killer, how did we lead up to it. I always love this type of show. To be honest with you, when I was picking Nancy Drew for one of my premiere shows for this show, I don't know what I was getting into. I didn't know. I honestly thought this is going to be similar to the books, because this is based on a series of books back in the olden days of pre-childhood me. That I thought, okay, it's going to be a week-to-week mystery. That will be interesting to see. And then I watched the first episode. I was like, okay, this is not what I expected. But that's the beauty of it. I went into the show not knowing much about who these characters are, what the story they're trying to tell here. I didn't know any of that. So I went in with a blank perspective, and I got in there, nice and true. And by the end of it, I was very satisfied with the journey that it presented to us. I was very satisfied with the characters that we saw. Mostly a completed story arc because Tangent this season was cut short because of the pandemic that was happening at the time of its airing. So the remaining 5 episodes of the season were saved over to season 2. So that kind of hindered everything, for the show itself a little bit. So, but all honestly, they managed to write it off to like kind of make it, kind of like semi-conclusive. To have this like kind of like, okay, this story's kind of mostly over, so it feels like, yeah, there's still more of the story to tell, but definitely in terms of like this season's story, we kind of told majority of it enough to like feel like a completed story, if that makes sense. Thankfully it was one of those like the writers knew what they were doing, and they definitely knew how do we really wrap the ship up. So beyond that, in a binging format, I binged this pretty quickly. I think I started on the Thursday before I'm recording this, and then I finished it up a couple nights ago. So it was pretty fast. It's 18 episodes the first season, and I got scared that I was gonna delay this review to like the very end, but I didn't. So I was like very happy because I was very, very into the show again. I was very much into it. Even like if back to the week to week capacity, I will admit that the week to week, from what I remember, this worked more better as a binging show because like as soon as I finished one episode, I immediately want to get to the next episode. It wasn't one of those like I was like trying to theorize for weeks on weeks. It wasn't that type of show. It was definitely like I need to binge this now, and it did, and I finally did, and I consumed it, and it made the entire experience much more better, in my opinion. But kicking off into like now the actual like real spoiler section, starting with the story. The first thing I noticed was that. Again, similar to like when I first started watching this, I literally had no idea what the hell the story was. And I was like, you know what? I didn't even see a single trailer. I saw the images. I saw maybe one preview, but it wasn't a full trailer. And then off to the races on that front. And then when we got to the actual first episode, I was like, they were setting up the pieces, setting up these characters, setting up, possible, contenders for the overall mystery, giving us a small taste of the lore. And, this was one of the shows that they had a traditional pilot. They make one episode, they have to pitch you, and then you're filled with enough suspense to figure out, to wonder what's going to happen next, what's going to be the next thing that you want to see happen out of them. And definitely, by the time I finished episode 1, I was like, yes, I'm very, very into it. The story takes place in a small town of Horseshoe Bay, located in Maine, which is for my fellow New Yorkers, it's above us. It's above us, so it's not relatively. It's in the middle of Boston and New York, so it's kind of in one of those middle states that no one really gives much attention to. We follow our titular protagonist, Nancy Drew, who has just wrapped up her high school education, but she had a promising future. She was going to go to Harvard or Yale. I forgot which university she was going to go to, and she was going to be set for life. However, tragedy struck in her family when her mom passed away due to cancer, and then that basically turned her entire life upside down, eventually ending her up to stay in town longer than expected and kind of derailing her entire life plan, kind of becoming a shadow of her former self. So because of a year after her high school graduation, where now she's still stuck in Horseshoe Bay, she's kind of just become a resident of the town, working and, just trying to live day by day, trying to figure out what is next for herself. And then, as well as her entire cast of characters, her friends at this point, let's just, in quotation marks, thus begins a mystery where one night during, I want to say it's not, I don't know if it was 4th of July or Labor Day weekend, or what, it was a special celebration. I already forgot the name of it. When a woman tragically is killed and there's no signs of the killer, she's to blame as well as her fellow friends, and now she has to clear her name, as well as trying to, dive deeper to like how into the paranormal, into the supernatural, and how bigger this, one woman's death really is, that will shake up the entire town of Horseshoe Bay, quote unquote. So even I said a mouthful. I really did. Honestly, it was kind of like, did we really need to include another supernatural element show into the CW? Because they got enough. They got enough with, with supernatural itself, with the Winchester. So I'm like, did we really need it? Which I'm like, honestly, at first, I didn't. But I was intrigued. Like, they definitely did something different with, establishing their own mythos. They weren't, like, held down by pre-existing tropes. They were able to, like, come up with new, innovative things that also can be plausible in our day and age. Because, it is what it is. And honestly, but for the whole way through, I was like very intrigued. I never thought it was to be a nuisance. They didn't overuse the trope that much. They only used it in precaution, and obviously they used human elements and human emotions to kind of carry through majority of the story as well. And that was what I was very intrigued by, so to speak. Um, and again, like when I originally was like theorizing what this show could be at the start, I honestly thought it was going to be week to week. I thought this was just going to be like maybe like a mini arc for the series, and then we'll dive into some other mysteries. But no, this was the majority, if not the entire thing, delved into that. And on top of that, not just this entire murder, but the town of Horseshoe Bay also has this like embodied tale of dead Lucy, where she was a former sea queen of Horseshoe Bay. She had a lot of promise, a lot of future, and then one day she mysteriously disappeared and died. And now people see sightings of her all throughout the town. It's kind of like that folklore superstition that not that many people believe in, but the ones who do believe in her, does believe in her. So that gets tied into the death of the woman as well. Her name is Tiffany. Damn, I already forgot. Did I already forget the name? Oh damn! I already forgot the name. Oh lord, I'm doomed. I'm gonna delay this one. But the woman who died originally is Tiffany, but that ties into the larger mystery of like dead Lucy and her lore in the town and like how tragic that story really is. So going to like the characters now, obviously I'll start from the get go with our titular character Nancy Drew, played by none other than Kenny McNabb. This being also fun fact, this is her first acting job. This is her first. Honestly, it feels like she's done this for a while. Like that's honestly the energy that I get from her, that like she's been doing this for quite a while, and now she's kind of like shaking the rust off a little bit, getting back into it, and that's entirely what the character is, so to speak. Where this character is not perfect. She's not perfect. Most mystery solvers that I've seen have usually like considered themselves to be pristine, perfect, never wrong, never want to admit a mistake. Nancy has made a lot of mistakes, and obviously it's the human element of like you're not perfect. You're not. Obviously, she has been through a lot in the last year of her life. Not only did she lose her mom, she has a very distant relationship from her dad, Carson Drew. And, her entire identity is gone at this point. Like, it's still there, like fragments of who Nancy Drew was. Like, I guess you want to call her classic Nancy Drew from the books, if you want to be specific like that. That's the character that, she's no longer that, but it's still there. Like embers of her still exist. It just very much is very deep down, very, very repressed. And that kind of, motivated me to keep seeing her. Cause like, as long as I never read the books, let's be honest. I think maybe I've read one Nancy Drew book in my early days, but I never read a proper, like, I wasn't a fan of Nancy Drew herself. So I didn't know anything about the character, going into it. I was letting Kennedy's version kind of being like the definitive Nancy Drew take, for me at least. For me, for the rest of the time, she will be the definitive Nancy Drew in my eyes. And her take on it is like very much, it's a perfect balance of like, she is a mystery solver. She has a passion for what she's doing, but she's also just a person. She's just a teen. She's still like 19 or 20. I want to say she's 19. She's still a teenager trying to figure out who she is in this world. And, definitely she represents the example of like, when you get out of high school, sometimes you know what the hell you're doing and then you're completely wrong. Or sometimes you have no idea what you're doing, and that scares you. Cause like, what do you do now? Like, you have this entire life plan and it's all gone. Like it's all gone and gone. So what do you do after that? That's the big question mark. It's scary. It's impactful. And you hope that, everything will work out at the end of the day once you do figure it out, so to speak. But I will say definitely not just her, like, this mystery indirectly gives her back into that world, into that passion that she used to love so much. She definitely is able to have the people that are with her in life, such as her friends, the Drew crew, as we call them, consisting of Ace, Bess, Nick, and George. Those people who are like, again, it's one of those like, you don't expect these people to be together, like, like the Scooby-Doo gang. Like you never get that these characters should be even friends in the first, or even like have an association with each other, but it works. Like, it just works. Sometimes your best friend doesn't need to have all your same interest. It's just being there and like, being compassionate and just being supportive. And like, whether that is from the get-go or it takes a while, like, those are the people you really want to stick around in your life, that will definitely impact you for better. And definitely them being in Nancy's life definitely improved her to kind of like, be this new version of herself, where it's like it's the evolved form of the classic Nancy Drew, like the mystery solver, but is well more mature and well more open to things. She's still made mistakes. Don't get me wrong. She's still made plenty of questionable choices, but that's part of learning, growing up. Like, you make those mistakes so you learn for the next time. Like, okay, I could have done this better. I should have done this better, and I will do this better. Um, and just like, again, like, just it's not the performance itself, and like, when it comes to these leads, I always like put more emphasis on them, because they're carrying the show, they're like the face, so you gotta put more emphasis on them. I am very much impressed by Kennedy McMahon for her incredible performance. There's like a couple episodes towards the end where I'm like, this is all authentic and genuine. Like, I can believe that this is an actual human being reacting. When we get to that big final twist at the end, which it's big, that I'm like, I'm not gonna spoil it, even if this is the spoiler review. At the end, where like she truly discovers who she is again, and it's like such a big, 90-degree turn of like, this paints everything in a new perspective. How do you, take this information and expect to go forward with this? Like, how do you expect to do that? Like, really, how? It's not next to impossible, but it's very hard. It's a very grappling turn. And again, that would have been great to see in the original full season had the pandemic not broken that up, which of course I'll probably talk about again when we get to season 2 definitive review at some point down in the future. Yeah, but so beyond Nancy, obviously, like I said, she has an entire team of characters in her disposal that helps her around. Definitely with the Drew crew, as I call it. I want to start with my boy Ace. I said this before many times in the episode reviews. If you're not aware, I love Ace a lot. I really did. He has such the most positive character, uplifting before. Where like there's a distinct, like I mentioned this before when I was reviewing live, but like the Ace you see in the pilot is not the same Ace you see in the show. Definitely, the Ace in the beginning is very much a dick, kind of like your traditional, like, douchebag, likes girls, wants to, like, just have fun, mess around a little bit. And then when you get to, like, the core show itself, you realize there's more layers to him. Like, he is a character that is, like, dealing with a lot, and he hides it underneath the surface because he just wants to help. He wants to help everyone he can, but he's not willing to let anyone, like, really tap into, like, what's going on in his life, because he has his own beliefs of, like, he needs to deal with his problems on his own, but he'll gladly help anyone else out. Ace was been for a lot this season. He really did. At first it's like, it's always like, his relationships, especially with Bess, Nancy, Tiffany's sister, and then even his own dad is like, all like, it just makes it all relatable, so to speak, where, he was interested in Bess originally from the beginning, like as a romantic interest of sort. But once Bess starts to like let herself more open to him and like reveal certain things about herself to him, and he's like, okay, you know what, I can still be there for you. I can still be that platonic best friend that's like willing to help you out. And they actually do. He's a man of his word, which is like very commendable, very respectful. Like he eventually does agree that, yeah, I have problems too. I can, but we can help each other, like, be that support system, that cheerleader we each need in a platonic way. We don't need to be dating or, doing the deed or anything, to be able to do these things. And then with Tiffany's sister, because Tiffany's sister came back once the whole, like, the actual investigation began, to try and figure out, like, make sure that Tiffany's death is murdered as a murder and not like a cause of natural death, because, money and everything, so to speak. It's definitely one of those cases where like Ace had to learn once again that, like, romance is not just the one picture that you get and then you just assume that that's it for the rest of your life. It isn't. There definitely is more possibilities to like different types of romance, and him seeing that for that perspective definitely kind of made him grow a little bit, kind of made him more like, independent and more mature at the end of the day. Seeing his relationship with his dad is sweet, because like for me, I have a close relationship with my dad. It's not that often, in my opinion. Like I don't notice this often, but like I think the only time in recent years that like I've seen like a real genuine father-son connection on TV, in my opinion. Of course, you could probably say, "Oh, what about this show? What about that show?" Like, guys, I only watch the shows I like to like. So if I do say I haven't watched it, I haven't watched it for one reason or another. I haven't gotten to it. Like Archie Andrews and his dad from Riverdale in the first few seasons, that was like, very like believable. This here too, where like, the seeing Ace's like, family relationship with his dad, and just like seeing them like, being like an actual father-son, it's like, it kind of, it struck me to a core. Like, it makes me even more relatable to him. And eventually, once he starts pairing up more with Nancy towards the second half of the season, it was like, okay, it's a much more natural, like, connection, because like they're obviously building something up with these two, down the road at least. Nancy's oblivious to it at first, but like, I could tell Ace got a little something for Nancy. That doesn't go without saying. Going into Bess, which honestly, Bess was like a complete, like, again, a 90-degree turn for me, where, again, the Bess we saw in the first few episodes, being this, kind of like it's the perfect example of social media where, like, you see everything in a lens, like, you only see what they want to see, but then down below you see like the true, aspects, the true best from within, when we're in private moments, or eventually once she does start opening up to the rest of the others. Like, for example, like, I was baffled when she went from like having an American accent to eventually like not having a British accent, which I'm like, what the hell? I honestly felt like going into that, like, I am not going to get used to this British accent whatsoever. And now rewatching the show, I'm like, I don't remember even being comfortable with the American accent. The American accent sounded so fake. And I'm like, it's so crazy. Like, whenever you rewatch a show, you have a new perspective on it. You have a new opinion on what you used to believe, and then it kind of improves your opinion, because like, it's one of those like, oh, this is what we were trying to go for. Oh, this has a completely different picture now, because you understand the full thing. Which honestly, that's one of the cool things about rewatching a product, because like things now, and you can view it as a different perspective, mind you. Going for Bess is like, Bess kind of like was a little bit of a pushover this season. Definitely her entire spiel towards the latter half is like trying to get in good with the Marvins, which is another rich family in Horseshoe Bay. They have a strong connection, a strong like family heritage to the town, and she's heard about them for so long, and she just wants to be included. And then the moment she does finally get into it, she realizes it's a lot of hard work, and it's one of those families where you kind of have to really side with the family on everything. Like, the idea of friendship and relationship sounds okay and, approvable, but like in reality, it's like, well, we would appreciate if you really look out for your family first. You know what I'm saying? And definitely having her to deal with the struggle, especially towards the end of the season, where she had to choose between the family that she gained, realistically over the family she joined last minute. Like, definitely, that's her struggle, and definitely she's made some pretty questionable choices that even I wouldn't agree with. I would not agree with that whatsoever. Going into questionable choices I wouldn't make, Nick. Where, for Nick, I don't know why. I always thought they were going to write him off at some point early on in the season. I don't know why. I just really like felt like he had a purpose in the beginning, and like he didn't work at the Claude first. So I was just thinking he was just going to be like a pilot episode, maybe like a second episode type guy, and then find a reason to leave. But no, he sticks around, and Nick has, I think the most serious journey of all, where he's been for a internal life change, where he got sent away to prison for a murder that was indirectly committed by him, and he had to suffer for it, and for years, like prison changes people, jail changes people, like being on the inside, confined to four walls, and not being able to leave. It changes people. It changes them on a fundamental level, because they have to adapt. They have to respond and survive. That by the time they do get out, if they do get out, there's a good chance that they may never revert back, because the system has done so much damage to them. But thankfully for Nick, he turned out to be a much better person from it, like being more open, being more realistic, being more competent, and just a person that like, I just want a second chance. I just want an opportunity to be able to grow and be able to like become a new man with a new destiny. That's all he wanted, and then that's what we got to see throughout the entire season. Like, at first he was trying to make Nancy work, because that was his first serious, his first serious girlfriend out of this entire experience. He just wants to keep that going, but he realizes that this isn't how it always has to be. Life is ever changing. Life will always throw new opportunities, new avenues, and definitely to see them like break up in the middle, and then Nick develop a much more natural relationship with George. And again, it's the theme of the scene is like the people we choose in life bring out the best in us, and Nancy helped Nick kind of like realize there is like much more to life than just settling for what comes next. And then for, seeing with George, it's like there is such a thing as like authentic, partnership, authentic love, and like helping the other out of that, the darkness, or just out of the the crossed out nature of like what you're not supposed to believe, but in reality it's what you're able and should be able to do. And going into George specifically, I think George is like, I think the most badass character. Like, you got to have a badass character on your team, and Nancy's a badass herself. They're all badasses in their own self, but like George is like, yeah, you do not want to mess with her whatsoever. You do not. She's been through a lot. She definitely had to grow up much more quicker, but it doesn't take away, like, she's still a teenager. She still is gonna make mistakes on her own, and definitely she has, and she admitted. And I feel like next to Nancy, I feel like the actress who, sadly I am forgetting her name, sadly, on the Leah Lewis. She's gonna be the star of Elementals, the next Pixar movie. So kudos to her. For her, she had like the next badass moment, the next like, oh my god, this is so believable. Like, I feel the raw intensity, whether that is the actress doing such a great job or just the character like having reached that point of like, I need to express this, I need to release this information to the world, and like, figure out what the problem is, and like, tackle it head on, which not that many people get to do, so to speak. And it's one of those, like, the tough guy or the tough girl act, or however you want to say it, where like the more you know about her, the more like, episodes we get that, focuses a little bit more about her personal life, about what she has to go through in life. It definitely starts like, dwindling down the possibilities of who she is and what she's able to do. And honestly, like, I really campaign for George Hart. I really do, because I've said this before many times, and I think this is just my personal, how I grew up in life, where there are people that have been hurt by other people, and then the bad people, put this ideal into you, like, this is how things are. Then when like a good person that comes around that actually like, no, this is what it's naturally supposed to be, it's weird for them because that's not what they're used to. And seeing George do that, because she had an illicit affair with Ryan when she was underage, it definitely like left a mark on her indirectly that wasn't entirely what was supposed to be. And then like, by the time we get to the present day of the show, it definitely like the marker's already imprinted on her, where like it is already done. It's already done. But definitely like, that her scene at the last episode of the season was like commendable. I was like, this is amazing. This is like, if that year was like less, I would definitely say like this could be an Emmy scene, in my opinion, in my opinion, at least, so to speak. We do have two other characters that are part of the main cast, which is on Carson Drew, which I'll be honest with you, I gave him a lot of flack when I first started reviewing this show. I gave him a lot of flack because originally he was supposed to be played by Freddie Prinze Jr., a la Fred from the Scooby-Doo movies back when in the 2000s. And I was so bummed. I was like so excited to see Freddie Prinze Jr. on my screen every single day. Not every single week for, years on end. I was so excited. And then they announced they were going to recast him with the current actor, Scott Wolf. And I was just like, oh, okay. I don't like you now, Freddie Prinze Jr., because I don't know you. But now going to the show without having that negative association in my brain, like, I already know Carson Drew. I already know him as a character. Let me like give season one him like a fair chance that is not criticizing him to death. He's still like, again, it's still like, the human element of like, he may be a dad, he may be older, he may be a lawyer, but he still makes mistakes. You're always going to make mistakes in life. You are never going to be perfect. No matter how old you are, you will always have those moments where like, I screwed up bad, or I did the wrong thing. And honestly, for a dad, he held out. He held out a lot. There was a lot of things where like any other dad, like by the first time would be like, I quit. I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. He is a trooper. So I give him commendable respect for that. I really do. And the last series regular for the cast is Ryan Hudson, which Ryan Hudson has such the most unexpected character development I've ever seen on television in a long time, where when we first saw him in episode 1, he was a complete douchebag. I hated him. He was a dickbag. You have every reason to hate him. And then by the end of it, it's like, you feel for him. You realize this is a man that just had very inconvenient things. He still made mistakes too. Like, don't get me wrong. He wasn't perfect. He still has like elements of being a dick, but he a lot of those elements were only amplified because of certain life events that were out of his control, that were usually tailored to his parents. That goes to show, like, rich people only think about themselves and only think about being the victors at the end of the situation. They don't care about anyone else. So definitely that was like the big, like, okay, I can give Ryan some slack. I can give him some credibility and some respectful points there. And definitely just, like, the way, like I said with Nancy, the way the big twist at the last episode of the season, like, it went down. It was like, this is like the most natural reaction I can say. Just the confusion, just the, what do I do now? It's just like the actor who plays him, like, really sold that pretty well. So I give that, wholehearted, like, props to, like, it was believable. Like, almost everything in this entire show is believable. Saying the paranormal part, which still debatable if they actually exist, still debatable. I will say that they added a lot to the mysteries, which I'm not surprised considering the fact you have an 18 episode season. Like, you can't really stretch out one murder for 18 episodes. Definitely they solved that. Not too quickly, just like everything was paced correctly. Everything seemed natural. Like, this was the next natural step. This is the time it took to present the story and present the world and the characters. And definitely it just showed the kids, like, they knew what they were doing. Whether that was the Death with Tiffany or Dead Lucy or then the Aglaria, the last antagonist for the season, dealing with all that, it felt natural. It felt organic. Like, I believe this isn't forced. This isn't, like, everything somehow seems plausible. Which with this type of show, if you can achieve that, you've done your job. You've done your job pretty well. But nonetheless, yeah, I give the wholehearted respects to the writers, the cast, the crew, to everyone that worked on the show. That this first season, it was a tough sell because, again, there wasn't like a big Nancy Drew. In my opinion, I haven't seen like there was a big Nancy Drew book club or anything like that was clamoring for a show. I wasn't clamoring for a show, but seeing it, like, being like, here's our take of the character. You don't have to read it in the books. You just go into it. It may be the CW, but they do something, that feels natural. It feels organic. Obviously you're going to have your steamy moments. Obviously you're going to have these, like, maybe sometimes not the best acting moment. I'm willing to admit that, but the story was strong. The characters were all entertaining and very much, everyone had a story. Everyone had character development. It wasn't anything just for the sake of, like, purposefulness. Everything had its mark to make, and it all worked out at the end. I was a little bummed the pandemic had to cut this season short originally as planned. But for me, it still told the story it needed to tell this season. Somehow they managed to make it all work, and they were able to wrap this up pretty well, speaking with enough clues and cliffhangers to leave you hanging for season 2. But yeah, so for me personally, I recommend Nancy Drew with the highest marks. I would recommend you binge it. I recommend you watch it in general, and definitely this is one of those shows where, like, even beyond season 1, you go finish the rest. You got season 2, you got season 3, you got season 4 on the way, so definitely get to it, man. So I'm gonna get two thumbs up, highest remarks from me. Let me know in the comments below, what did you think of the first season of Nancy Drew? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What's your honest opinion? I would love to have a conversation with you down below, because it's Nancy Drew time, baby, and I just want to have more talks about it. But thank you so much for watching. If you're unaware, this has been What's the Two from ActionX, reviewing the entire first season of Nancy Drew. If you want to know normally What's the Two besides this special review, next week we're starting up our Nancy Drew episode reviews for season 4. So go check them out. We're going to start up every Wednesday night after a brand new episode, so go check it out there. Other than that, if you're unaware, again, you can go subscribe to us on youtube.com/ActionX videos. Ring that bell for notification when our next review is live. Like, favorite, share if you want to, and as well as follow us on social media. But until we see each other again, for all you members of the Drew crew, thank you so much for watching. And I hope you have a great day, have a great night. But until then, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.